I'm going to show you how to make some raw vegan Jamaican jerk kale chips. It's a pretty simple recipe, as with most kale chips are, and it's going to be delicious. There's a few components that are really going to make the flavors in this pop. I have some cilantro. I'm a big fan of cilantro. I have an orange, which I'm going to peel. Lots of recipes with Jamaican jerk just use orange juice. I'm a fan of using whole foods and getting an extra fiber and the phytonutrients and vitamins and minerals that could also be in the skin surrounding the juice in the orange. We have a lime. This is going to give it a little bit of a tangy pop. It's going to complement the orange and the cilantro. I have some garlic. The recipe calls for 2 cloves. I have 3 kind of smaller sized ones. About a tablespoon sized chunk of ginger. I'm very fond of ginger and garlic, so another reason why I really like this recipe. Your Jamaican jerk seasoning, and then I have some pumpkin seeds right here. And you could just get pumpkin seeds and soak them overnight and use those. I'm using today this Go Raw brand. They're already sprouted, so which is nice. I don't have to go through the process of soaking and sprouting them myself. And then I have coconut aminos for the salty component, and then a little bit of water just in case I need to thin this out. You're gonna need a high-speed blender to blend all this up. 2 dates. This is something I'm trying that I haven't tried before. I'm just gonna add a little bit of sweetness to complement the orange and the lime, and just see what that does to the flavor. If you don't want to add any extra sweetener, you wouldn't use dates. If you didn't have dates, you could use coconut sugar. I would go with about a half tablespoon or a teaspoon. I have 1 bunch of kale here that I have already torn and put it through my salad spinner, so it's already ready to go. You're gonna need 1 bunch of curly kale. First thing I'm gonna do is start putting everything into my high-speed blender. Now there's a ½ cup right there, and this is a really high protein seed. About 1 ounce of these contains 7 grams of protein, and I weighed these out, and a ½ cup is about 2.3 ounces, so over 14 grams of protein just from the pumpkin seeds. Kale in itself is about 3 grams of protein for about a cup packed, and there's at least 4 cups here, so there's already 12 grams plus more than 14 grams. We're getting already up to 30 grams of protein in this recipe, which is quite a bit, and that makes it a really healthy snack with all the other vitamins and minerals present in the fiber. I'm gonna peel my orange and put it in. This is gonna add a lot of vitamin C. On top of the kale in itself has over 130% vitamin C, and that's just in 1 cup. So I'm just gonna throw wedges in here. I'm gonna take my garlic and my ginger. I'm gonna cut it down just a little bit more because I know sometimes it likes to pop around and not get blended in all the way. Anytime you're using dates, always want to look inside. It's a whole food. Bugs like whole foods, and sometimes you'll see these little black specks, and that's because a bug has gotten in there and had a little party. This checks out, and you also want to make sure to get the crown. This is just this little woody part. You don't really want to eat that. Both my dates check out, which is awesome. My lime is going to cut in half, and then I'm going to use my little citrus juicer. And the nice thing about limes is they're pretty much always the same size. You can get a lot of variety in lemons, but a lime is pretty much going to usually be 2 tablespoons. Delicious cilantro. I'm going to use a tablespoon of Jamaican jerk seasoning, 2 tablespoons of aminos. There's going to be some liquid from the orange, but I already know I'm going to need a little bit, so I have a cup of water just in case I need that much. I'm going to start with about a ½ cup. What's nice about kale chips is when you make the sauce that you're going to pour over the kale, it doesn't matter if it's too runny because you're going to dehydrate it anyway. And that blended up really well. One thing I did notice, and this is something you'll want to be aware of, is As I turned it off, I still heard some kind of sounds of something knocking onto the bottom of the container, which means it could be a chunk of ginger or a date. So real quick, I'm just gonna turn it back on. There we go. So now that I turned it off, I didn't hear that anymore. It's got pretty good consistency. Now all I have to do is take this and pour it on top. What I like to do is pour about half of it, and then I'm just gonna kind of use my spatula and turn the kale over and get some of the stuff on the bottom to come on top. And that's just gonna allow me to cover it a little bit better, evenly distribute the Jamaican jerk sauce. It's got this really awesome green color from the cilantro. One way of doing this is you would just use your hands and get in there, and that's an easy way to cover the kale pretty consistently. I found what I like better is if you have a spatula, you're just gonna kind of paint the kale. You're just gonna take the spatula and spread out the jerk sauce pretty evenly, and then I'll just go underneath the kale like this, and then continue painting it all on again. Next is the really easy part where I just take my kale and I'm just going to grab each little piece and lay them out. And when I tore this before, I was making sure that each piece was kind of like a bite-sized piece. Sometimes when I get towards half of what's left, I'll just do another stir here with my spatula, because some of the pieces haven't been completely drenched, and there's usually a little bit of the sauce on the bottom of my bowl here that I can just spread around a little bit more. What I highly encourage everyone to do is when they're making a recipe, write it down. And I encourage this because this is gonna make you much better at creating your own recipes, and it's gonna give you a lot of insight into the flavors that you really, really enjoy. I had this written down before I made this recipe when I created it the first time, and then I just went through a few modifications, which was adding a little bit more aminos and then adding the dates. And then when I taste them, when they're done, I'll get an idea of what difference was made from adding a little bit of sweetness. Because I use dates, which is a whole food and has the fiber, it's gonna be a little bit chewier of a chip, because when you just use a sauce that's mostly water content and say a seed or a nut like cashews or pepitas, you're gonna get more of a crunchy chip. But for example, with my barbecue kale chips, there's dates and sun-dried tomatoes, and when that one dehydrates, I have a chewy chip. So you're gonna wanna determine if you like crunchy kale chips or chewy kale chips, and then being able to recognize which ingredients do that. So if you made this and you really like the additional sweetness, but say you like crunchy kale chips, you would use sugar, or you could use maple syrup instead of the dates, because that's not gonna have any fiber, it's not gonna be chewy, because if you pop a date in your mouth, it's chewy and sweet. And you might want a crunchy sweet kale chip, and that is going to be much more likely if you don't use dates. So here I have 2 sheets. I'm gonna pop these in my dehydrator for about 12, it just depends, 8 to 12 hours, basically until it's crunchy at 105 degrees. Just to give you an idea of how much I love kale chips, here's 3 different kinds. I've been making a lot the past week. I just find them to be really delicious and so much cheaper than the store. Give the recipe a try, let me know what you think. If you want other recipes, let me know. I have a ton of them. Love it if you commented below. Give me a thumbs up if you like this kind of content, and thanks so much for watching.